streaming from Los Angeles. And I am joined by my co-hosts today, Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico, and Carlos Ponce just outside of Mexico City. Hi, guys. Welcome to the show. And we have our guest today, Laurie mocabe, who is joining us. Where are you joining us from, Laurie?
I'm outside of Boston, Massachusetts, in a small town called Groton.
Yes, I'm very familiar with Brockton. I used to live in Boston, lived there for 3 years. And Laurie is the founder of the SMB Group. Laurie, why don't you please introduce yourself to the audience? We'd love to hear about you and what you're all about, and then we'll go right into the show.
Yeah, sure, and thanks for having me. I've been in the tech industry for over 25 years, and I've been an industry analyst for a large part of that. And really kind of got started as an analyst the same time cloud applications and software as a service, it didn't even have that name back then, in the late 90s, started taking off and coming into the forefront of technology. So I've been very involved in that for a long time and have been pretty exclusively focused on how SMBs, small and medium businesses, use technology in their businesses. And that's kind of the genesis of our firm, of SMB Group.
Great. So Laurie, the SMB Group, what's the main focus there? What are you guys looking to accomplish? Who's your typical client?
Yeah, we're an industry analyst company. So what we do is similar to what you might think of a Gartner or an IDC or something like that, but all we do is small and medium business. So we look at how SMBs use, adopt technology in their companies, what their drivers, their challenges, needs and constraints, all of those kinds of things. And we do both primary research, we do a lot of survey-based research, as well as vendor-side research. And that kind of provides us with a perspective in terms of what's going on in the market, both in terms of how SMBs are using technology and also the resources that are available to them.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to learning more, and certainly today's topic, I think, is very timely for a number of reasons. But Carlos, please introduce the show today. Let's kick this off. You're on mute.
That happens all the time. Please bear with me.
Well,
okay,
at least you're predictable. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm the predictable one here. You know when and where I'm going to mess up. Okay, Laurie, we're going to be speaking about. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to be speaking about rebooting your business for the future, or in other words, why digital transformation is more important now than ever. First question that I have for you, Laurie, is why did you choose this particular topic for today's conversation?
Yeah, well, I think for one big reason, I mean, we've had more change foisted on us as a society, both as business and individuals, in the last few months with COVID-19 and all the changes it's wrought than we probably have had in maybe the last 5 years. So we're if you ever heard that phrase, change is the only constant, I think that's more true today than ever. But I think it's important to take a step back and remember that before COVID-19 reared its ugly head, we had this other big transformative change going on, which, whether you call it the digital revolution, digital transformation, whatever you want to label it, it's become very obvious over the years that companies that can use technology to their advantage, that can harness data and take a data-driven approach to the market and to how they serve the market are really at an advantage. And I think that when change comes, you can really tell that people that are prepared and can respond quickly, that whole thing becomes even more important.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Okay, Tullio, Kim, do we have any questions for Laurie?
Well, I think my first question is a relatively simple one, and that's just, what is the definition of digital transformation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a lot of definitions out there. We have a standard one that we use in our surveys. I don't know if I can duplicate it for you exactly, but it's basically using technology as the backbone so that your company can more easily adapt and respond to change your business model, change your products and services, change how you market, change who you market to. But being able to harness that data and take a data-driven approach so you can both understand as well as predict and respond to the market in terms of your business, so you get a competitive edge and stay aligned to what the customers want.
I think I lost Laurie. Am I the only one who's having a...
It's just you. I heard her just fine.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Thank you for that easy to follow definition. And going back to this idea of your main focus being this small and mid-sized businesses, I think this is particularly relevant in a time like today because those are the business that are particularly being hard hit, right? They lack the liquidity to, ride out a storm or something. Can you talk a little bit about that? What would be your immediate sort of checklists or suggestions for these businesses to start doing today that would be feasible, right? Immediately.
Right. You're absolutely right. A lot of these, the very small businesses only have maybe a couple of months of cash on hand to see them through something like this. And, we all know there's been a lot of both business and individual types of government programs in a lot of countries to help people get through this. But I think the most important thing is to really recognize today what are some of the trends that are really coming into focus that are probably here to stay, right? And how do I may not be able to do everything, but there are certain ones that are going to be more or less important to my business. And although I might not be able to predict everything that's coming, there are some that are the writing's clearly on the wall. So I think, the first one that, I know you're all familiar with is the whole work from home trend. And we know that, a lot of SMBs had some kind of work from home program going before this. We know that from our research, but it was generally pretty limited, like maybe 10% or so of workers had that opportunity. Well, of course, with the virus, all of a sudden, it was mandatory for a lot of companies to go to work from home. And necessity in this case has really become what I say the mother of innovation. So everybody's kind of learned how to use different tools and solutions, whether that's video conferencing or cloud solutions for different business functions, whatever, to support this mobile workforce, wherever you are kind of workforce. And, we definitely see that a lot of these businesses are planning to have a lot more of their workers work remotely, a lot more even as the virus subsides. So I think right there, the whole thing is, are you equipped? Is your business equipped to really enable productivity and collaboration that you need when people are not necessarily working in an office environment? Because I don't expect people are just going to all of a sudden show up back in the office again. So that's one of them, but we have a couple of others too that we see.
Laurie, are there particular verticals that are less prepared than others? I mean, it's kind of become cliche where people will say something like, when difficult times hit, that's when you discover whether you're not ready or you're having challenges in your business or you've been prepared. I mean, it's kind of cliche. No one could really prepare for this kind of thing, right? But for which industries you think are more challenged in terms of becoming more prepared and digital and essentially rebooting as needed?
Right. Well, the unfortunate fact is that for some businesses, it's very hard to do that, like personal services. Like if you're a massage therapist, it may be difficult for you to provide that service virtually. But on the flip side, we're seeing a lot of industries, this whole virtual trend is going well beyond just work from home. We're seeing kind of like a tele-everything trend. So any kind of service or shopping or anything that you can do virtually, people are moving to that. So, obviously industries like hospitality, travel, things like that are hit hard. But we're seeing a lot of things that used to be done very physically going virtual. So one great example is here in Massachusetts. Since COVID-19 has hit, the percentage of telemedicine visits has gone up 5,100%, which is like, what goes up 5,100%, right? So I think we had technology to do a lot of things before virtually, whether it was e-commerce or, online gym classes or telemedicine or onboarding if you're a business, hiring people and bringing them on board virtually or virtual real estate tours. But now we're seeing this really become mainstream. So I think another thing, as a small, medium business, look at that and look at what aspects in your business. You might not be able to virtualize everything, but what aspects of your business can you virtualize? Because that's going to be very important.
Laurie, I'm curious. Is there a need not only for businesses to get more comfortable with this idea of going virtual, but also a need for businesses to get their clientele more comfortable with the idea of going virtual? You mentioned telemedicine. I think not always, but a large, customer base there tends to be an older generation who might not be as comfortable with using technology, or people who just like to do things, in person.
The old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Do we as businesses have to figure out creative ways to get our clients?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think every generation probably gets stuck at a certain point, age-wise, where I've learned to do this and now I'm kind of done, I'm like sticking with the phone. That's where I stopped. I'm not going into, computers. So maybe if you're 90, that's kind of where you stop with the phone. And, I don't know, it's not one for one in every situation. But yeah, I do think businesses have to figure out how to make this more comfortable. And it's not going to be for everyone and for everything. Obviously, if you've got a crazy rash that comes up, it's a perfect application for telemedicine if you're comfortable with that. But if you are having a heart attack, you really should call the ambulance and call 911 and get over to the hospital. So it's a question of educating, I think, and recognizing that for some people, they're going to be really quick to get into this. I'm pretty amazed. There was some other statistics about the number of people that want to do online counseling, therapy, and people don't want to go back into the office if they've gotten comfortable with that. I know I'm part of a YMCA, and I used to go in for all these classes, and it's been closed, and now they're doing a lot of classes live online. And there have been a lot of members that have said, even when you open, can you keep doing classes online? Because a lot of days I don't have time to get in the car and drive to the Y. So I think it's a mix. It's a mix of education, and like anything else, it takes a while for people to get comfortable. Absolutely.
So Laurie, a lot of companies have had to make this shift in a vacuum, right? What about the experience? People are used to certain experiences. You don't necessarily get that, as some of the questions alluded to. What's the next phase of this in terms of the digital transformation? Can some companies actually embrace this not as a, oh my gosh, we have to, do this to keep up with the trend, versus let's get really smart about transforming and disrupting a model that can improve how we serve clients, not take away on how we serve clients? What are you seeing in terms of demands for improving the customer experience, investing in making it better than it was, not just a gap stop?
Right. Well, I think that's where it really comes into, to be using solutions that enable you to see kind of in real time what is going on in the market, in your customer base, and all those kinds of things. And it's going to really depend on the business. So for instance, one of the other things we know is people don't want to touch a lot of things anymore. So if you're in any kind of business where, physical transactions are involved, point of sale, airline kiosks, restaurants, you need to figure out, how do I make this experience so it's more comfortable? There's an interesting company, it's called InfoLink X, and they've created a menu system, a touchless menu system. So when you come into the restaurant, you basically use a QR code, get the menu downloaded, and then you can order right from your own phone. So I think there's not going to be one formula for all businesses in terms of how they're going to have to reinvent. There was another company I was reading about who made drones and figured out how to make a drone that would actually go over and get into every little nook and cranny of a stadium or an arena with ultraviolet light that would kill germs and kill bacteria. Now, they were not using drones for anything like that before. But they have a pulse on the market, and they have the operational logistics systems in place that they could recalibrate their manufacturing and recalibrate their marketing and who they're marketing to go after what they see as a new opportunity. And I think that's really kind of the crux of digital transformation, because things, we know change is just going to always be around us. Things are always going to be speeding up in terms of how quickly things change. And so you have to be able to kind of pivot. And without the right kind of technology in place, that can be very difficult to do.
Talking about this change and the ability to pivot, what's the pain point with your research? What is the spot that businesses are like, no, I'm resisting this. This, you really should, but you find that most companies aren't wanting to do. And how could they do that better?
Yeah, sadly, in the past, we often found that a lot of businesses, it took either a very big gaffe or a very big kind of risk that they weren't able to mitigate. So, for instance, you could think maybe of a manufacturing process where you were not alerted through the controls in the system if something was awry. And so something got sent out to a customer that wouldn't function properly and could cause a major problem with the customer. And that kind of thing, if that happens in a business, most businesses are going to say pretty fast, I've got to fix that. I've got to have the diagnostics and the real-time information in my manufacturing system, so I'm alerted by the system that this is an error and I can adjust and fix it before this thing ever goes out. So I think in too many cases, it's kind of like the easy thing to think of as security. A lot of companies don't put the right kind of security into place for their companies, digital or physical security for that matter, until they're breached. And then that problem makes them respond. I think today the other big thing is people are looking and saying, oh my gosh, I had this light bulb idea and I wasn't able to implement it. And I got beaten to the punch by somebody else in my industry. You really, today, I think, you not only need to be able to see the trends, but then you need to be able to execute on the change, right? So I think people are becoming more aware of that.
Laurie,
interesting. Go ahead, Carlos. Hi. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Tullio. I just wanted to jump in real quick. There's an aspect about today's topic that I'm kind of intrigued about. We're talking about rebooting your business for the future, or why digital transformation is more important now than ever. The question that I have is, if we consider the non-technological or non-technology aspect of a company, or non-digital aspect of a company, meaning the people, the human beings operating the computers and every technological aspect. considering that, what would you say to those that are having to somehow reboot themselves at the personal level or as a team because they have to, because they're confined, they have different working conditions, but at the same time refuse to embrace the concept of new normal.
Right.
A lot of people are saying, no, this is not normal. I mean, this is like a new temporary, but not normal. What would you say to them? What would you say to these people who are kind of have mixed feelings about not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy. Change is hard, right? So in general, it's pretty easy to put on the blinders and say, oh, things are going to change, but it really won't impact my business, or things will get back to normal quickly. But most of the people we're talking to and surveying, I think it's fair to say the blinders have been pretty ripped off with this pandemic. So the question is then, how do I move from fear to focus, right? And that involves a few things. It involves looking at what can I do now, right now, to help my business survive. And then how do I best engage my employees, my customers, anyone that I interact with, partners, so that I can do a better job of evaluating what's changing. Is it the industry? Is it the customers? Customers right now are buying not only different things, but they're buying for different reasons in a lot of cases than they used to buy in the past. So very important to figure out, before you even look at technology, how is the ground kind of shifting around my business and my industry? And then ask yourself, really honestly, what's the cost to my business if I don't change? And I think when a lot of businesses do that, if they're really honest, they realize that, the cost to the business if they don't change means they may not survive much longer. Because I see very few instances. I mean, we can look from very big companies like airlines down to little companies like restaurants, information technology companies, banks. Everybody is really reevaluating how I need to do things differently. So what I like to say is digital transformation and the need to be agile and flexible in the business and become more responsive to what's going on in the market, that need's been around for a while. But this virus has just kind of given it a kick in the pants and really kind of turbocharged the need to wake up and, smell the coffee.
I think you said something really interesting, and this talks to, I think, what Carlos was mentioning, which is it's not necessarily the lack of technology as it is the impact this has on the cultural aspects of people's lives, right? We're moving from all the investments used to be made, including digital transformation, used to be made towards a high-touch environment, right? Everything was to create a high-touch, highly engaged environment. Now we're moving towards a no-touch environment, right? I mean, it's kind of but we're still symbolically speaking a no-touch environment, right? Or at least one that doesn't put people at risk by having high interaction.
I don't think what I said, I think, was no-touch transactions, right? You still want to be touching people,
right? But what I'm
you
saying
may
is
be
the
virtually touching and interacting and engaging. And I mean, I think of all the events that have been postponed that I normally go to, and vendors are trying to figure out, how do I reinvent this event and make it engaging on a digital platform, which isn't easy, by the way. I haven't gone to too many of these events that used to be a couple of days long that translate well to a digital environment yet. So there's an opportunity right there if you can create a platform that helps with that. So no, it's still
Laurie,
needs
what I'm let me hang on just a second. What I was saying is the perception that the resistance is going to be from this idea of this mindset of, I want to go back to the way it was, right? But what's being proposed is this idea that we may never go back to the way it was. So how do we help people make that shift without using fear as a motivation, right? Well, if you don't, your business is going to die. That's a fearful motivation. How do we create an environment where the transformation is incentivized by the need to improve lives, not survive? What do you think is going to be needed to make that transition? Because otherwise, we're going to be making decisions on fear, and people reject fear. Ultimately, reject fear.
Yeah, no, I hear you 100%. That's what I'm talking about. You have to be able to identify the opportunities, right? So like this drone maker said, oh, here's an opportunity. I can figure out how to, use infrared light with my drones to disinfect public spaces. Or the company that said, yeah, restaurants are, people don't want to necessarily touch menus. I'm going to figure out how to create a menu system that's a no-touch menu system that then that restaurant owner could put into place and, take one little obstacle to dining out off the table. So it's really about creating a shared vision. What is the best way for my business to survive and thrive into the future? Naturally you have to recognize the risks and you have to recognize the gotchas, but the outcome is hopefully moving forward and doing that by getting a lot of input from your employees, your partners, the vendors you work with, but also your customers. Don't forget your customers. We really need to tap in and hear what do they want from this experience. And that's really where the opportunity lies.
All right, so guys, if you have additional questions, please think of them now. We're going to be wrapping up, but I wanted to quickly recap what I've heard. One is digital transformation is needed, in essence, to survive and thrive in today's environment. Two, it can be used as a way to improve the customer experience, to improve the quality of service you provide to your clients. And lastly, the cultural challenges will go away if you focus on improving the quality of service that people are getting. I actually went to Ventura County this weekend because it's the only place you can go sit at a restaurant outside to eat. At least that's what it was. Now it's changed, even though all the riding has made it impossible to do that here in LA. But I went to a restaurant and they literally had a QR code. I scanned with my phone and the menu came up and I could order something and then I could pay right there. And I was like, this is brilliant. They should have done this a long time ago. I don't want to touch a menu, go through all this paper. I just want to do it right on my phone. So in essence, that change was actually very welcomed. I thought that was brilliant. I was like, plus you don't have to print paper and manage all that. So again, I'm encouraged by this idea that the company ought to think about making digital transformation a way to improve the quality of service they provide, not as just simply a way to survive. Any questions you guys have before we wrap up?
Not here, Tullio.
No, I think it's been a great conversation. I really love your mantra of moving from fear to focus, and I think that's what Tullio is tapping in on as well. And I think it's just learning to be comfortable with the unknown, which is never easy.
Yeah.
But like you said, like the only insurance we ever purchase that we know we're going to use is our life insurance, right? So.
Right. We're spending this mandatory, like car insurance, right? You have to have it.
Yeah. Hopefully you won't get an accident. Hopefully you won't get sick. But one thing is for sure, you will utilize that final one. So I think just this idea of having to get used to the unknown is something that we as humanity need to do anyway. And the sooner we can get over that and the sooner we can shift from fear to focus, the better our businesses will be, the better our lives will be, the culture that we're creating for our employees. So thank you. Yeah, all I have to say is thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you all.
Thanks for joining us. So now we know for sure there's not just two things that are sure, death and taxes, but also the use of your life insurance. That's the third thing you're going to be sure to do. Thanks for joining us, Laurie. Pleasure having you. Carlos, who do we have tomorrow? Tomorrow we're making up for yesterday. Yesterday was Blackout Tuesday. We paused the show in solidarity. And we're rebroadcast. We're having that show tomorrow. So who's our guest tomorrow? Please let the audience know. And this is the read Carlos Lips stage of the show.
Yeah, exactly. Because we're just waiting for the closed caption. This is for the hearing impaired. Anyway, so tomorrow we're going to be speaking with Shannon Bex and Russell Hertzel, the CCO and COO of Vooks, with a V, and we're going to be speaking about answering the question actually about streaming. Does streaming storybooks crack the code? So Shannon and Russell are going to be answering this question on tomorrow's show, titled "The Challenges of Quality Screen Time," right here on Dojo Live at 1 p.m. Pacific, and it's going to be closed caption for the hearing impaired.
There's a great example of a company who's adopting digital transformation for the books and storytelling business.
Exactly.
So see you all tomorrow, and thanks for joining us, Laurie. And until then, have a safe rest of your day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you, everyone.
Stay well. Bye-bye.